So I'm personally very excited today to welcome Dr. Jasmine Jackson, some of us call her Dr. Jazz, to Healthy Movement Habits for the New Year and Beyond. Dr. Jazz received her PhD in physical therapy from Elon University, not Elon Musk. Elon University is completely unrelated. In 2016, Dr. Jazz had decided that she wanted to be a physical therapist when she was just 13, and she tore her ACL and meniscus. Some of these things are from her online bio, but her online bio does not say where she worked after graduating. But it gives the impression that it might have been one of those places that move a lot of people in and out, which is a trend I personally have witnessed in physical therapy. On her website, she said, and it's Process Physical Therapy, so that is the name of the organization. On the website, it says, I envisioned a place where patients could receive top-tier care and spend more time off a table rather than on a table. A place I could provide my patients with quality assessment and treatment every time they walk in the door without being rushed and without having to juggle multiple patients or utilize physical therapy aids to flow patients through
All
exercise.
right. So, yeah, you guys can call me Doc Jasmine, Doc Jazz, call me Jasmine, whatever you feel comfortable with. Very happy to be here today to kind of talk about healthy movements that you can kind of start incorporating in the new year, but also beyond. It sounds like a few of you have had your fair share of physical therapy, so that prepares you a little bit for today. If you all have any questions about anything, you can throw them in the chat. Or, if I ask if you guys have any questions, feel free to like unmute yourself and, answer before we move on. But I'll be intentional with taking like pauses to make sure everyone's questions are answered, but we'll also save time at the end to answer any questions as well. And so, we'll start off with a little bit of just kind of like background, and then today is designed to move. If you feel comfortable moving, we go over a couple different options, whether, you feel comfortable doing something maybe seated, or if you feel a little bit more comfortable on the floor, we have lots of different options. And if any of those options that we demonstrate today you don't feel comfortable with, let me know, and I can try to show you something else instead. Yeah, so we'll take it from here. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right. All right. So today we're talking about, again, healthy movement habits for the new year. And I say and beyond because a lot of times, we come into the new year and we're like, this year's going to be the year that I do this. And we come off really strong, and then we just kind of like mellow out a little bit and kind of like get out of the flow of things. And so these are some tips and tools that I want you to be able to take away, for a lifetime. And so Rosanna did a great job of introducing me. And so just wanted to kind of share a little bit more about it. So this is a little bit about our background here. So again, I'm the owner of Process Physical Therapy and Performance. We also have another clinician, Dr. Brianna, who's amazing, who works with us as well. And we, again, exist just to provide, exceptional care to help everyone, athletes, active adults. To me, like, you're an athlete if you want to move, right? Whether that's like, hey, like, I want to be able to like play with my grandkids. I want to be able to garden. I want to be able to play pickleball. Whatever it is that you want to be able to do, we want to be able to help you do that. If you're like, hey, I want to be able to get up and down from the floor, we want to be able to help you do that as well. And really just help you do the things that you want to do as pain-free as possible. And again, we provide one-on-one physical therapy that's tailored to you as an individual. So no cookie cutter programs here. So we do physical therapy. However, we do really emphasize recovery and prevention. I feel like a lot of times in today's society, we react to everything when there are lots of ways that we can prevent things. And so we'll talk a little bit about that today as well. All right, so what is movement? So when we talk about movement in relationship to exercise, we're really talking about a specific motion or action that's performed during physical activity or exercise. And typically these movements, they really kind of target and work on engaging different muscle activation, right? So whether it be strength, flexibility, endurance, balance, coordination. These are all things that we want to kind of work on. So if any of those are things that you guys want to work on, just give me like a hands up or a thumbs up on your screen if you would like to work on, improving your strength, your flexibility, your endurance, or anything like that. Great, great. Yes, fantastic. Oops, there we go. So when we talk about exercise and its importance, it's important throughout our lifetime, but also as we get older. And one thing that's really great about exercise is that it offers a wide range of benefits for older adults, as well as our whole population, but specifically with physical and our mental well-being. And so when we look at it over the course of time, exercise and activity helps decrease our risk of chronic disease. So think about things like, cardiovascular disease, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, diabetes, obesity, things like that. It always helps. It also helps decrease our cognitive decline, our physical decline, our frailty, social challenges, and fall risk. So I know a couple of you mentioned, like, hey, you've been to physical therapy. That's a great outlet to have a social environment, whether you're seeing, patients that come there at the same time as you when working with another clinician, or if it's just a social interaction between you and your clinician, or, if you're going in a walking group and things like that. So exercise helps with social challenges. It also helps decrease fall risk. So I kind of alluded to, being able to get up and down from the floor, right? And so a lot of times what I've seen in my experience is that with older adults, like they are nervous to get down on the ground or have a fall because they won't know how to get back up, right? And so exercise and working on some of these different components can help us learn how to get up from the floor if we, do happen to have a fall, but it also works on our balance and things like that so that we decrease our fall risk. Additionally, it helps improve our function, our cognition and mood. So, anytime I know for me personally, whenever I go exercise afterwards, I feel like great. I feel like I have a lot more energy. I feel like I'm in a better mood. If I had any stress, some of that has been a little bit of has been alleviated a bit. We also see that it helps improve our lifespan, our quality of life, and again, it helps improve our strength and our muscle mass, our cardiovascular health, our bone health, our balance and coordination. If I could sell, all these benefits in a pill, this would be like $1 million pill, right? But this is something that we can do by just kind of like taking one step at a time and just doing, a little bit of walking and some other things that we'll talk about here in a minute. So what? Like, yes, exercise is great, but if I feel comfortable at home and, I'm comfortable just watching TV or reading my book, like so what? Like why does it matter to me, right? And so why it's so important is it has all those benefits, but a lot of changes that we see in aging is that, you know, over the course of time, as soon as we get to the age of 40, our muscle mass starts to drastically decrease. It's also known as sarcopenia. Additionally, some of you may have heard from your doctor that you may have osteopenia or osteoporosis, which basically means that our bone density decreases. Additionally, you guys have probably heard of Arthur before, right? We start to get a little arthritis, a little bit of joint stiffness. We also notice some decreased lung capacity. It may be harder to breathe going up and down the stairs. If we're going, walking through Costco, that's a big old store. We might lose our breath a little bit, right? But then most importantly, it has what we see as increased mortality rate with sedentary behavior. And what I mean by this is as we get older, if we're not exercising or doing as much physical activity, it can be accompanied by things like cardiovascular disease. It increases our risk. It increases our risk of cancer, type 2 diabetes, excuse me, a decrease in muscle function, as well as Alzheimer's related disease, depression, and all of these things. And something that I found like really fascinating in an article that I was reading was that what we're finding now is that our cardiovascular fitness, so think about our ability to do endurance-based activity, is a stronger predictor of our mortality rate than traditional risk factors such as smoking, high cholesterol, type 2 diabetes, and hypertension. So we see, we can go back and see we can see all these things that happen, as we age, and then we go back to all of these things that it affects, right? So exercise and activity is going to help us, keep those things mainstream or even improve some of these things that may start to decrease a little bit as we age. Does that make sense, everybody? All right. Does anybody have any questions about any of that so far?
Good information.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Absolutely.
Well, can I just say one thing that I learned?
Yeah.
I was talking to a physical therapist because my mom is 80 years old, so I'm trying to keep, exercise with her as much as she's willing to do it. However, one of the physical therapists at Howard University was telling us that a lot of older people, when they fall, they some die because nobody's checking on them and they haven't learned how to get up from the floor. So he was training us, and I was trying to train my mom. But of course, I'm glad you said that because I'm going to watch again so I can share this with my mom. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, falling is like one of the number one things when I'm working with the older population that they're nervous about, but they just don't know how to get up off of the ground. And what we kind of see is that like the the longer it's been since we've gotten on the ground, the more afraid we are to then get on the ground and try to get back up, right? So I say like, if like getting on the ground is something that you're comfortable with doing right now, keep doing it. Because just that simple act of, getting on the ground to garden or stretch or something like that, that's naturally just going to help decrease our fear over the course of time too. Any other questions or comments before we move on? All right. Is the chat good, guys? Chat's good?
Yep,
Okay.
it is good.
Perfect. All right. Thank you. All right. And so we're going to go ahead and get into our exercise guidelines recommended by the CDC, as well as some other organizations. And so I want you to kind of just think about this. This holds me accountable too when I see the recommendations because I'm like, man, like I could definitely be doing more too. So I don't want anyone when I read these to be like, get down on themselves or anything like that because we all could be doing a little bit better at something, right? So when we talk about aerobic activity, again, I want you to think about like endurance, your heart moving, that type of thing, right? And so we're looking for at least 150 minutes of moderate intensity aerobic exercise per week. And so 150 minutes, that's going to put us at about like about 2.5 hours per week of some type of moderate intensity aerobic exercise. And when we are looking at, moderate intensity, we're looking at about 50 to 70% of our max heart rate. Just in more simpler terms, we're thinking about the talk test. And what I mean by that is that when you're doing this activity, you can talk and someone can understand you. You're not like out of breath. You can kind of still have a conversation. So think about, walking with friends. I don't know if you're doing too much talking while you're swimming, but that's about a moderate activity, as well as gardening. So 150 minutes of moderate intensity aerobic exercise per week, or 75 minutes of vigorous intensity activity per week. And so vigorous activity is going to be a little bit higher. So that's going to be one of those things where you might have to take a second, like catch your breath a little bit. And that's going to be about 70 to 85% of your heart rate max. And that's going to be running, tennis, Zumba, things like that. And then moving on to strength training, we're looking to do this about 2 times per week. In terms of balance training, the recommendations aren't necessarily clear everywhere, but there's a pretty general consensus that we're looking for about like 2 sets of some type of balance exercise per week. I guess can people do this for me in the chat? Could you maybe put in the chat like if you feel like what you like to do for exercise or movement? It doesn't necessarily have to meet these guidelines, but if you like to go walking or if you like to, do weights or if you like to garden, can you just kind of put that in the chat for me?
Jasmine, did you see there's a question in the chat too,
Oh, let me
which
see. Let me
are the guidelines valid into your 90s?
Yes, so this is for this specifically is over I pulled the guidelines for over the age of 65. These ones here. All right, so we got walking and gardening. Walking and Pilates, yeah, yoga, Pilates, water aerobics. The water is hard. I do those water aerobics and I'm sore the next day. Those are spicy. Swimming, weights, that's great. Walking, yoga, walking, PT core training. Great stuff, everybody. Biking, yeah, awesome. We got walking the dogs, senior stretching, class, gardening, physical therapy, gold gyms, great stuff. And it seems like with some of these things too, like you guys have some great community as well, which is one of the great benefits of getting out and doing some of these movements. Okay, awesome.
Contra dance. That's a great community builder.
Yeah, what's contra dance like?
It's like line dancing. Is that?
Okay,
Oh,
okay,
it's more like square dancing. According to my
oh,
husband, I don't know.
okay. All right, awesome. All right, thank you everybody for sharing. All right. And so kind of like as we kind of get into this, I know there's a little bit of a stigma with strength training, especially as we get older. Some of the concerns that I've seen are like, I'm afraid I'm going to hurt myself, or I'm not doing it right, or maybe there's some pain in some areas where it kind of prevents you from maybe going as hard as you would like to. But the number one thing is that people just don't have guidance, right? And there's a little bit of fear about making sure that they don't hurt themselves. And so um, I'm going to come back to this here. Whoops. So on this next slide right here, it's just kind of like a question like, should older adults lift heavy weights? And I just kind of want to show you this video here.
Should older adults be lifting heavy weights, or should they stick to less intense exercise? So some of the best studies out there on looking at this are the Lift More trials, where they took men and women with low bone mass and they had them do heavy lifting, deadlifts, squats, overhead presses, and jumping jumps with relatively heavy loads. And what they found was that heavy lifting far outperformed the low load exercises of older adults. These are just two of many studies showing the need for our older adults to prioritize improving their strength.
All right. So that's just kind of a little video about the importance of like strength training. So again, like all of those things that we see that impact that strength training impacts, right? It's going to improve our muscle mass. It's going to increase our power. It's going to improve our bone strength. And so a lot of times, one of the issues is just like, are we lifting heavy enough, right? And so that's just something that I want you guys to hang on to. We're going to get back into it a little bit later, but I just want to hang on to that piece there. I feel like a lot of us are pretty good at the aerobic piece of things, swimming, walking, and that stuff, but not as like we're not really sure where to start with the strength training piece of things. So I'm happy to kind of talk a little bit more about that today. But I want to just before we move on, I want to commend you guys on the fact that you guys are moving in some capacity right now, because there is a study done with about 3.3 million people, and what they found was that individuals over the age of 18, between like that 18 to 65 range, only about 17% of people were hitting the mark on what we need to do. And we're seeing this like trend of increased like mortality and just kind of like poor health in our country. And then additionally, over the age of 65, that number dropped to 13%. All right. And then people who just felt like their health was poor, it went down to 5%. So the biggest thing is that we're not moving enough. But again, you guys are doing stuff already, so that's awesome. I just want to show you how to kind of like fine tune some things and maybe hit some of the areas that you're not hitting. But great jobs, everybody, so far. All right. So again, this is some of the stuff that you all alluded to that you're already doing. So healthy habit number one. So remember, we want about 150 minutes or about 2.5 hours of moderate activity. And that's where I recommend you all start. So if you're not doing any of this, I recommend starting like, with a brisk walk, like jogging, if you feel comfortable with that. Right now, cycling indoors on a bike might be a little bit more warm than walking outside. I don't know if anybody likes to, walk outside when it's this cold outside, especially when there's snow on the ground. It's probably not the safest thing to do. Swimming, gardening, and some of you kind of mentioned dancing. So again, like great job on this stuff already. The next thing that we're going to get into, and so this isn't necessarily listed on like the CDC, there's not like a mobility outline, right? But often what I see just general in our society is we're doing like a lot more sitting. And so things tend to get tight. They make things hurt a little bit more. And we don't want that, right? Because that can also impair our ability to move the way that we want to move. So we're going to go over 3 different movements, but I'm going to show you a couple different variations. And again, you're more than welcome to try them along with me. And then just kind of let me know if you have any questions along the way. Feel free to, hide your video, or you can kind of show it, kind of whatever you feel comfortable doing. But I'm going to stop sharing so I can show myself. So we're going to start with a hip flexor stretch. If you feel comfortable getting on the ground, we can do that, but I'm going to show a version where you don't have to get on the ground, okay? And so I actually have like a little cushion right here, so if you like something for your knees so it's a little bit softer, you can also use a pillow or something like that. And we're just going to put one knee down and one knee in front. From here, we're going to kind of just do a little kind of like butt squeeze almost. And then just kind of like a little like shift forward without like arching our back or anything like that. We don't want to get crazy like this, right? Once we start to arch that back, then it takes away from the front of our hip. So we're just going to kind of squeeze the glute and do a little lean forward. And there I feel like a nice stretch in the front of my hip flexor right there. And that helps loosen up those tight muscles that we experience when we're doing a lot of sitting. So that's the kneeling version. With this stretch, we like to do like essentially like up to 90 seconds. So like, 3 for 30 seconds, 2 for 45 seconds, or if you just want to hold it all at one time for 90 seconds. So that's the first variation. The second variation is going to be in standing. Let's see. All right, so in the standing version, we're just going to have one leg behind us. And then from here, we're just going to kind of squeeze our butt muscle here, too. And then we're just going to kind of like do a little lean forward there. And if balance is an issue, you can always kind of hang on to like a desk or something like that. But we should feel a little stretch in the front of the hip. I know a couple of people are standing, giving it a shot right now. Are you kind of feeling it in that area? If so, you can give me a thumbs up. If you're not really feeling that in the area, okay, great. And so again, this is something that, sorry, see my face. Again, this is something that we would hold for about 30 seconds, 3 times, a total of 90 seconds. And we would do it on both legs. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, great. And so then our next exercise is going to be for our hips. So again, I'm going to show a floor version first. And so on the floor, we would kind of have our feet set up in this way. So like, let me see if I can dump down here. So kind of like my knees kind of at 90 degrees here. And then my back knee is at 90 degrees here. This is probably a better angle. Right here. And then from here, we're looking to stretch our butt muscles now. We're just going to kind of like lean over that front leg, kind of keeping our back nice and flat there. So anyone that's trying it off camera, I'll just kind of give you a second to play with it. And same, all of these stretches for the most part, we're looking to hold for about 90 seconds in total. So that would be our on the floor version. Our seated version, this is something that you all have probably tried a time or two, is like a figure 4 stretch. So we were going to take one leg and cross our ankle over our knee. You doing there? Okay, everybody there? All right. And so then from there, like I already feel a stretch already a little bit, but if you want a little bit more of a stretch, you can lean forward a little bit. Again, try to keep your back a little bit more upright instead of rounded like this. You want to be here, lean forward, and we should kind of feel that in our glute a little bit. You may even feel it on the inside of your leg too. All right. You can always, with a lot of these things, I like to kind of like compare side to side to see if there's one side that's tighter than the other. And if there is, that one side just might need a little bit more love. All right, great. Before I move on to the next stretching exercise, I want to make sure I'm not moving too fast. I want to make sure no one has any questions.
I'm not seeing any questions in the chat about this.
All right, perfect, great. And so then the last mobility one that we're going to do, it's going to be more for the upper body. So it's going to be for our mid back. This is also something that could just kind of get really stiff. Sometimes what we kind of like see over the course of time is because we're not doing any stretching for our back, we kind of like move into this position here. So this is going to kind of help us keep things a little bit more like upright. So I'll start with the seated version first. So for the seated version, you're going to keep both feet on the ground. And we have two options. I want to make sure that you're sitting on the edge of your seat if you're doing this at home. We can either go hands across our chest or hands across our head here. This one's going to be a little bit more challenging, okay? And then from here, what you're going to do is you're going to take a nice deep breath in, and then you're going to exhale and rotate. And you want to turn as far as you can, but you want to make sure that your feet don't lift up off the ground. And then we're looking kind of to feel this in our back area. And then we can, breathe in again, exhale, go to the other side. And then I like to do that for about like 10 repetitions or so. So if it's feeling pretty good, go ahead and hit a couple more if you like it. I know that I need it right now. And when you're breathing into it and exhaling as you go into it, that helps us take advantage of a little bit more range of motion, just because our when we're going to help us get into some more range versus everything feeling like super tight. All right. So the more challenging version where we're laying down, we call this an open book, okay? So typically, this is a good one that you can kind of do in bed. You likely want a pillow underneath your head here. And I have my knees just up to my chest here. And from here, we're going to have both hands stacked in front. And again, we're going to inhale. And then we're going to exhale and turn. With this one, some people get like some snap, crackle, and pops, and that's okay. And the biggest thing with this one is we want to make sure that this leg doesn't try to move up. So if we have some stiffness in our mid back, then our whole body will try to roll together. So try to really focus on keeping that top leg down there. So again, with this one, same thing, like to do about 10, maybe to 15 on each side there. All right, so that's kind of like my kind of like probably top 3 things to start with in terms of mobility. Anybody have any questions about any of that before we move on to the next portion? Okay. All right. So let's move on. I'm going to share my screen again. All right. So so I don't have to stay in here, I'm going to just jot these down real quick so that we can go over and I don't have to kind of go back and forth between the screens. But these are going to be all things that are going to be a great place to start. So I know I kind of harped on the importance of making sure that we're loading adequately and making sure that we're doing it with enough weight. However, I know we're all at different levels in here, and some of us are used to using weights and some of us may not. So these here, I'm going to talk to you about how to start them, but then also how we can make them a little bit more challenging if it's something that you feel comfortable doing by yourself or with your physical therapist or with a trainer. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing here now. Okay, so we're gonna start with something known as a sit to stand. That's also known as like squatting to a chair or squatting to a box. So from a front angle, we're just going to start here. We want our feet about shoulder width apart. With squats, a lot of people want to know, what's like a good like foot position, right? They want to know like, should I be super wide? Should my toes be turned out? Should my feet be narrow? But just kind of like shoulder width, and whatever your feet kind of want to do, that's okay. Just because all of our hips are built differently, so like everyone's toes shouldn't point forward. If it feels more comfortable turning out, that's okay. And so then from there, we're just going to kind of like shift our weight forward a little bit, and I'll get you a side angle as well. And then we're just going to stand up. Yep. And this is basically a squat, all right? So we're just sitting and standing. Sitting and standing. There's a test that we do in physical therapy that tests how fastly you can do a sit to stand 5 times. And that helps us measure your power and how quickly you can move, and it's an indicator of health as well. The side version of that, same thing. I'm just kind of like doing some minor shift forward and standing up. We want to make sure that we're not kind of leaning completely forward like this and then standing up. That's going to put a little bit more pressure on your back. If the chair that you have is too low, you can again get a pillow or something. Elevate the height of the chair to then make it a little bit easier for you. Now, if we want to make it a little bit harder, spice it up a little bit, then we can add a weight, all right? So say, you can start with like 5 pounds. I really think that you all are incredible athletes, and that, as you get used to it, you could probably like move up to like 15 pounds, 20 pounds, 30 pounds, but over the course of time, maybe not necessarily immediately, right? And that's really going to load our legs. And when we think about, having to get, up and down from the floor and drive through one leg, that's basically a part of our squat. Our squat is just doing that with 2 legs, right? So just continuing to work on that over the course of time. With these exercises, the amount of volume can vary, right? So if it's really, really hard for you, maybe we just start with 3 sets of 5. If it's something that's really, really easy for you, then we're going to start with like maybe like 3 rounds of like 10 to 12, and then maybe we'll add a little bit of weight as well. Okay? All right. So the next thing, yes, Laura?
Yes, Dr. Jazz, when you say add weight, you mean you're going to put weights in your hands? I mean, what do you mean add weight?
Yeah. So let me demonstrate with this exercise here. So like we can just get like a dumbbell or a kettlebell and like just do the same thing and just stand and sit. And I would say that would probably be, like the safest place for us to start. If you have a trainer or anything like that, there are other ways to load that sit to stand. But right now I would start with like a dumbbell or a kettlebell or something like that in your hands.
Thanks.
Yeah, of course. Any other preguntas?
Well, and Dr. Jazz, I have some book that suggested just a 12-ounce bottle of water full. You could put weight on anything without buying equipment.
Right. Yeah, I know some. Yeah, that's a great point. I know some people they that don't have a gym equipment at home, but they do movement stuff at home or weights at home, if they have like a backpack or a bag, they just put some stuff in a bag. You know how heavy our ladies' purses get, right? You're lugging that around all day. We could just kind of hang on to it and then sit to stand like that as well. So. All right. All right. So the next one that we're gonna do is a calf raise or a heel raise. So let me see. Let me put you guys over here. All right, so we like to hold on to something for balance, but ideally we don't want to be like pushing all of our weight. I don't know if you can see me right here. We don't want to be pushing all of our weight through whatever we're using for balance. So, we can use a wall or something like, like 2 fingertips, just to kind of help us with balance a little bit. On the countertop or on the wall or something like that. From there, we're just going to go up on our tippy toes and back down. So this is a pretty safe one, I find, for everyone that we can do in standing. And so like from the back, my heels are just, going straight up, straight down. If that's pretty easy for you, then we can switch to one leg and do the same thing. If we're starting with our double leg heel raise, again, to my point earlier, this is something that I think that with 2 heel raises, we could kind of work up to 3 sets of like 20 repetitions. But if that's too hard, we can start a little bit lower, right? But if you're like breezing through and you're like 3 sets of 20 is a walk in the park, then let's definitely try single leg and give that a go and get a nice little calf burn in there. These are also something that you can do seated as well, but I encourage most people is that if you're pretty safe to stand and you can kind of hang on to like the wall or your desk or a countertop, then do that instead. We're just going to get a little bit more benefit from that. All right. So our next one that we're going to do are going to be like butt kicks or a hamstring curl. And so with our butt kicks, again, if you need something for balance, you can hang on to something for balance. But we're basically going to start one leg behind us just a little bit. Then we're just going to bring that heel straight to our butt. If you're someone who has like ankle weights or anything like that at home, you can add an ankle weight on there. If you're someone who goes to Gold's Gym or goes to the gym, they have a hamstring curl machine where you can add more weight on it. But this is just kind of a good place to start to bring some awareness to your hamstring. Again, with this one, we're going to look about like 3 rounds of like 10 to 15 per side there. And it's also, I would say, with all of these exercises too, so even this one as well, just by taking your hands off, it's then going to turn into a hamstring and a balance exercise. So it's like you're getting 2 for 1 because you're having to balance on one foot while you do the other leg. But if you're going to do that, I would still recommend just being near something in case you feel like you're like, oh, like I, need to grab one for a little assistance just to be safe. Safety is always our first priority. All right, all good with that one there? Okay. So now, we saw that video with people lifting heavy weights from the ground, the deadlift, right? So we're going to next talk about something called the hip hinge. And what the hip hinge does is it prepares us for lifting stuff off the ground or doing a deadlift motion without hurting our backs. And so the best place I like to start to help people learn how to do this is by sitting down. So here we go. So here, you can have your feet shoulder width apart. With this one, you can actually go a little bit wider with your legs here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go hands across the chest, and we're just going to kind of like shift down here, and then we're just going to come up. We're shifting down, and you kind of see my back is relatively flat. It's not rounding like this. If you have a little bit of like that natural kind of like rounding your mid back, that's okay. We don't want to make it larger, okay? So we're just shift down and shift up. If you're like, oh, this is great, all right, then you can again have a weight at the chest or backpack or water bottle and start to kind of load it there too. And then as we start to load it here, we start to get a little bit more tension in our hamstrings and our glutes, and it's a pretty safe movement to do to work on that deadlift or that hip hinge. The biggest thing is that we just don't want to feel it in our back there when we do it. So once you've graduated from that, then we can do more of a standing hip hinge. So let me see. That's good. So with this one, this is going to carry over more to day-to-day life, right? So most people are pretty good about like squatting down to get something, all right? But what we want to do is we want to learn how to kind of sit our hips back here. And so with this one, we're thinking really about like pushing our hips straight back. And then as I do this without any weight, I already feel my hamstrings turning on without any weight or anything like that. Sometimes too, if you're like, oh, like that's kind of like hard to do, you can kind of put like you can kind of go against a wall as a target. Let me see if I can show you guys that. So like, here's my wall here. And so I'm like, I'm not sure if I'm actually quite doing it. And I could just, once my butt gets to the wall, then I'm there. And again, like I feel that in some nice tension in the hamstrings. Once you feel that tension in the hamstrings, you can then come back up. How's that feeling, David? All good there?
That pulls at my knees, and my knees are my biggest problem.
Okay,
So
okay.
the seated is probably better for me.
Perfect. That's why we have lots of different options. So great. Yeah, definitely start with the seated one then. All right, beautiful. Anyone else that tried that, were they okay with that one? Because that one can be a little tricky sometimes. So I just want to make sure.
It was fine for me.
Okay. All right.
I have to tell you, our daughter is a personal trainer.
Lucky you. Lucky you. She can help you with all this fun stuff.
She does.
Good. You all are blessed in that way to have someone that you trust that can keep you moving and cares about you, you know? Oh, awesome, Elizabeth. Your son's also a personal trainer. Fantastic. You guys have an excellent network in here. Like, look at that.
Our daughter also has a law degree and a doctorate in education, and she
Oh,
works as
wow.
a personal trainer. So
Oh, she's
very proud of
talented.
her, and she comes over and helps us.
I love that. Very blessed in that way.
And we're old.
You guys look great, so hey.
So are you.
Thank you. Thank you. Keep doing what you're doing. All right, let's see. So next, what we have is we're going to do a standing march. All right, so this is going to start to help with strength, balance, and a little bit of our core as well. So let's see. So So if you need something for balance, again, you can, use something to hang on to with like two fingertips. And we're just gonna march back and forth. Again, for this one, if you don't feel very great on 2 feet or on 1 foot, you can do it sitting as well. And for folks who feel like they have to hold on to something, I would almost say like sometimes it's better to hold it onto the side with one hand so that your knees don't like hit the countertop or anything like that. Great. And so oh yeah, I see you. I see you. So if we want to make it a little more challenging, we can turn it into something called a suitcase march or a farmer march, right? Don't get too caught up on the terminology, but basically a farmer march just means that you have two weights in your hand, and now we're going to start to work your core a little bit more and do the same thing. So I usually like to do about like 10 marches on each side. You can also do it just with one weight in your hand. With one weight in your hand, it makes you less even, right? So you really have to use your core, and that's going to kind of challenge us when we like lose our balance. We do the same thing there, and then we just switch hands and do the same thing there. Solid. Some other options for folks, again, that don't necessarily feel as steady on their feet. You can do it seated, and if you have ankle weights or something like that, you can attach those to your ankles and lift your legs up with the ankle weights there. But lots of different variations in that march to really work balance, your core, your hip flexor strength, that type of thing. All right, cool. I'm getting my heart rate up, moving around, guys. All right. So the next thing that we're going to do, so we do a lot of movement day to day, forward and backwards. How often are we moving side to side, rotating? I don't know, right? Maybe when we're dancing, we're definitely moving side to side, and we're definitely rotating. All right. And so this next one is a little bit of balance, but also starting to get us to move side to side. So all I would say is just kind of like, it doesn't have to be anything crazy. You just need kind of like a target or something to step over, basically. It could even just be like a line on the floor. Now what we're going to do, scoot this back, is we're just going to step over. Again, if we need something to help us feel steady, we want to make sure a counter or something is nearby. Now we can go slow to make sure that we feel okay. If you're like, this is a walk in the park, we can speed it up a little bit. That's going to help increase our heart rate a bit, make it a little bit more tricky on our balance. And then again, too, if we start to, get a little force into it, now we're talking about training ourselves to slow down. So another issue with kind of like falling and stuff is that we don't have like brakes. So think about like, if you have like a Ferrari, right, a really fast car, you need really good brakes. And so when we're moving quickly or coming down from a step, we need to know how to slow down too. So as we add a little bit more speed, and as we add a little bit more force, we're having to really focus on slowing down. All right. So that's our step over the target. And again, so the higher the target, the harder it will be for your hips. The lower the target, it will be easier for your hips. But again, safety first. So if you're like, I already know I'm a little unsteady, I don't feel safe doing this by myself, make sure you have someone nearby, or countertop. You know yourself better than I could ever know you, so you kind of know what you're capable of doing. All right. So the last two things are going to be more upper body related. And so the first one is called a push press. So I want you to think about, we really, want to make sure that, it sounds like for this group that it's of importance to be able to stay in your homes, right? And be able to kind of like live an extended life in your homes without necessarily having to have a ton of assistance. Not at this moment anyway, right? And so when we think about like having to, I want you to think about in the house having to put something overhead, right? In the countertop, in the put dishes away, right? I want you to think about if you have to take a plane and you have to put something in the overhead compartment, right? How heavy that luggage can be, right? So I'll show you the easy version first. And so with this one, it will be a little bit more imperative to, have some type of weight of force, just a little bit, just because the things that you are moving overhead may be a little bit heavy, right? And so the importance of training is that we do hard things in training and in rehab so that when we encounter our challenges of day-to-day life, they don't seem that hard at all, right? Yeah, oh yeah. And so we're just gonna take a weight. We can go one arm or two arms and just seated, and we can just press overhead there. Yeah. And then, if we wanted to make it a full body exercise, using one or two, we can now do like a little mini squat. So not sitting all the way in the chair, just a little mini squat. And then we can use the power from our legs to then push overhead. All right. So now we're using our legs, our arms, our core all at the same time. I want you to think about, you guys are like talking about like potential. I know maybe you guys had to shovel a little bit with this past storm, or even like maybe shovel this 4 inches that's coming, right? That's pretty like hard work, right? So think about like if you're working like your arms, your shoulders, and your core, like when it's time to go shovel, maybe there's a less risk of you throwing out your back, right? Because you've encountered the demands to do those things already. So that's the push press there for our upper body. And then the last movement that we're going to do is the row. So there are 1,000,001 ways to do the row. If you have a gym membership, they usually have like a cable machine, yep, to do the row there. I'm going to show you on a band how to do it. I'm going to try to get the best angle here. Let's see what we do here. Let's see. So you can do it one arm or two arms. And at home, if you have, some people have bands that they've gotten from rehab, you can just kind of like put the band in the door jamb, right? And we're just gonna basically pull and squeeze our shoulder blades together. Again, if you don't have an option to do two, you can just do one at a time, right? We're just kind of like pulling and squeezing that shoulder blade. There, do the other side. Again, at the gym, they have cable machines where you can do this. Some folks do different variations with weights and stuff like that with their trainers. But that's like the probably best entry level way to start rowing and pulling with things. So think about having to pull out of the garden, having to pull. We're using those back muscles to pull, having to do stuff around the house, just the ability to be able to pull and the ability to be able to push. So we did one push and one pull to end with. So before I share my screen again for some last thoughts, I wanted to see if anyone had any questions about any of the kind of like cardiovascular things that we talked about, or any of kind of like the strength and kind of movement exercise to begin with. Oh, thanks for the link on Contra Dance. Check that out. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. All right. So from what we've seen, in your opinion, and we can kind of put this in the chat, this is kind of I'm going to give you a heads up. This is kind of a trick question. But in your opinion, what's the best exercise or type of exercise? You can put in the chat and tell me your thoughts.
Yep.
Ooh, yeah. Ooh.
The one that you'll actually do.
Yes. Yeah, I like that. Walking, walking. I love it. Wait, like 2 more seconds for any more answers here. Okay. So again, yes, yes, exactly. Yes. Perfect. So answer, drum roll. The exercise and activity you're most likely to complete. So at the end of the day, it's all about kind of like compliance and knowing yourself and setting realistic goals. So I could say like, hey, I want you to start deadlifting. Go deadlift. And I can create a program for you. And you may have fear associated with it. You may just have no desire to know how to do it. And so you're not going to do it. Right. So it's about being able to kind of like meet in the middle and kind of do what you feel comfortable with. And again, what you're most likely to complete. At the end of the day, something is better than nothing. However, we are providing you tools today to be able to do a little bit more. And I would say again, like if there's something that you want to try, but you're a little nervous about it, always ask for appropriate help to be able to help, maybe work on strength more, work on balance more, get your heart rate up a little bit more. But again, the best exercise is the exercise and activity you're most likely to complete. And so I wanted to share a little bit of inspiration. So we're not going to watch this whole video. I've got 2 videos of part of my language of some badass older adults just kind of out here crushing it. And just a reminder to you that it's never too late to get started. So we're going to watch maybe like about 2 minutes of this first video. And this is a woman who you guys might have seen her in the news. She's actually from the Baltimore area, and she's a bodybuilder.
I am Ernestine Shepherd. I am 85 years of age, and guess what? I still got it.
Still got it? Indeed. This octogenarian athlete refuses to let anything stop her.
My mantra is determined, dedicated, disciplined to be fit, to get out and exercise. I don't let anything get in the way.
Ernestine's journey to health and fitness started when she was 56 years old, with a promise to her sister Velvet shortly before she passed away.
She held her head up and said, I want you to promise me that you will continue to help others to live a positive, confident lifestyle.
So Ernestine started working out daily, and at the age of 71, she took her training to the next level and entered her first bodybuilding competition.
I was the oldest one there. Next thing I knew, I came in first place.
Then came a call from the folks at Guinness World Records.
I was the oldest female competitive bodybuilder in the world. It wasn't just wonderful for me, it was wonderful that I was fulfilling her dreams and then plus helping others.
Even now, Ernestine does not show signs of slowing down.
Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I'm at the gym at 7 o'clock in the morning. I have done 11 marathons. And just 3 weeks ago, I did a half marathon. I don't feel like I'm 85. Age is absolutely nothing but a number.
All right, so that's a little of Ernestine, who's right down the road in Baltimore. And so again, just showing you that it's not too late to start. She said she started bodybuilding at 71 years old, so never let age be a factor from stopping you from doing what you want to do. And then the last video I have here is from, you guys might have seen this video as well, but this is a woman here. She's 105 years old, and she's out here still running.
Set.
that is not the intended takeaway here.
What should we tell our listeners and viewers about what we saw today?
Just stay healthy and keep running. And I'm going to keep running as long as I can. I find it fun. I like doing it.
All right. So
That was
105-year-olds and still running, which is
All
very,
numbers are just,
very impressive. All right.
oops, they could hear us.
Yeah. So any questions?
People should, if you want to put something into the chat, that'd be great. Or if you've got a question, you want to just go ahead and unmute yourself and say it, that'd be great too.
Circling back, I like the answer about something that brings joy. You could see it like in the last video. She's like still running because she loves to do it. It makes her happy. All right.
This was great. Thank you.
Of course, of course.
I tried to put it in the chat and I couldn't figure out how to do it.
No, feel free to unmute yourself. We're all good here. Yeah. Well, I know that you'll have the presentation on record. I know Carter's also going to send over. I'm going to send him the presentation.
Right.
Try to send it to him in a form where some of those links still work, so that if you you have me doing it, but if you want it kind of like more of a YouTube video, like there'll be another option there as well that you can click and look at.
Excellent.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
Hard to say in words enough. This was just wonderful. We're very, very grateful. The next event that we have in person at the Horticultural Society, at the Hyattsville Horticultural Seed Sale on February 8th, we're going to have a table to make Valentines. And we're going to especially encourage sort of some intergenerational Valentine making at around 1 o'clock when the seed sale has died down a little bit and it's not quite as crowded. So that's going to be at the Hyattsville City Hall. And Carter, do you want to talk about the next few scheduled sessions? Do you have that handy?
Sure. Yeah. So our next sessions are going to, in February, we're going to be looking at the Columbia Civil Air Patrol, which was the first all-black Civil Air Patrol operation in the country, and it was here in Prince George's County. It was at Crooms Airport, which is also known as Riverside Airfield. And we're going to get kind of a sneak preview of a new exhibition that will be at the College Park Aviation Museum about the Columbia Air Center. That's going to be on February 22nd at 2 p.m. And then in March, we're going to be talking about Pyramid Atlantic Arts Center in Hyattsville. In April, Mike Franklin is going to be talking about the sort of development of the commercial structures along Route 1. And in May, we've got something coming up about Made in Maryland, which is a cool Maryland-focused store in College Park City Hall. So, look forward to having you join us for any or all of those. And on the HyattsvilleAgingInPlace.org website, you can just sign up to register for any or all of them.
And of course, we also want to note that all of these groups are always looking for more volunteers and also more members. So in College Park, contact coordinator at nhn-cp.org. In University Park, contact info at helpinghandsup.org. And in Hyattsville, contact papcares2@gmail.com. You can also find our website, has all this stuff.
And if I could also just add in, Rosanna, the Route 1 area is also home to a new village that is in the process of getting started. Gateway Aging Together in Mount Rainier, Brentwood, and North Brentwood. If you're in one of those cities or municipalities and you want to find out more, go to gatewayagingtogether.org.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again so much, Carter, for doing the tech part of this, which would be hard for some of us. And thank you, Dr. Jazz. That was really helpful. And I know I'm going to go back and look at the recording. I have started at your encouragement. I have a set of exercises I do before I get up in the morning, which allows me to lay in bed and listen to classical music. And I'm starting to build like a set of exercises I do here and a set of exercises I do there, because I'm not someone that enjoys it, half an hour at a time. But if I'm setting little pieces up at different times of my day, and it really helps. So you've been a great help to me.
Of course, we call those movement snacks, right? So it's like harder to like sit down and be like, I'm going to work out for 30 minutes. I'm going to work out for an hour, but it's like movement snacks. Get up, do a little bit of this, go back to your thing, get up, do a little bit of that. So it's perfect. Perfect. Well, it was a pleasure meeting all of you. If you have any questions in the presentation on the last slide, my email address is there. Happy to answer any personal questions that you all have about anything. But yeah, again, thank you for having me today, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of your weekend and stay safe in the snow.